Hello everyone, hope you're having a great day today. Today we are talking about situational leadership theories and models. And this is part 2 of chapter 12. So in the 1950s, Fred E. Fiedler began to develop the first situational leadership theory, the contingency theory of leader effectiveness, which he published in the 1960s. Fiedler contended that our leadership style reflects our personality and remains fairly constant. That is, leaders do not change their styles. Instead, they should change situations to match their leadership styles. Contingency leaders are task or relationship oriented, and their style should fit the situation. So, to determine what your leadership style is, first, you determine whether your leadership style is task or relationship oriented by using the least preferred coworker scale, an instrument developed at the University of Washington. After determining your leadership style, you look at situational favorableness. Without completing the LPCS, would you say your leadership style is more task or relationship oriented? I will tell you, I tend to be more about the relationship. So, what is your preferred leadership style? Situational favorableness is the degree to which a situation enables leaders to exert influence over followers. The three variables shown in the top row of figure 12.3, which you'll see here in just a moment, in order of importance are as follows. Number 1, leader-member relations. Is the relationship between the manager and subordinates good or poor? The better the relations, the more favorable the situation. Paul Fenton has a good relationship with the people who work for him. You can watch video on YouTube of Paul being comfortable in front of the media and in the locker room with the players. Number 2, task structure. Is this task structured or unstructured? Do employees perform repetitive, routine, and standard tasks that are easily understood? The more repetitive the jobs, the more favorable the situation. Number 3, position power. Is the manager's position power strong or weak to assign work, reward and punish, hire and fire, and give raises and promotions? The more power, the more favorable the situation. To determine whether a task or relationship orientation is appropriate, use the Fiedler contingency model and answer 3 questions pertaining to situational favorableness, set up as a decision tree, here like you see in figure 12.3. This is the adapted model. You answer question 1 and follow the decision tree to good or poor depending on your answer. After answering question 3, you end up in one of 8 possible situations. A major criticism of Fiedler's model concerns his view that leaders cannot change their style, a task versus a relationship style, and that if the leader's style does not fit the situation, the leaders should change the situation to fit their style. It's usually difficult or impossible to change a situation to match your style. The other contingency researchers also theorize that leaders can and should change their leadership style to match the situation. Change your leadership style, not the situation. Tannenbaum and Schmidt identified 7 major styles from which leaders can choose. You see here in figure 12.4 an adaptation of their model published in the 1970s that lists the 7 styles. Continuum leaders choose their style based on a range between boss-centered or autocratic or employee-centered, which would be participative leadership for the given situation. Before selecting one of the 7 styles, you consider the following 3 variables. Number 1, your preferred leadership style. 2, the subordinate's preferred style for your leadership. And number 3, the situation. Based on the variables, which are not shown on the model, you select the appropriate leadership style for the situation. Even though the continuum model was popular, a major criticism was that it was too subjective. Determining which leadership style to use is complex. You must determine the style you prefer to use. the one your subordinate wants you to use, and the one the situation calls for. Then you select one of the 7 styles. At the extreme left of the continuum is autocratic style. At the extreme right is participative style. Number 1 is at the extreme left and is most autocratic, and number 7 is at the extreme right and is most participative. Number 4 is at the midpoint between autocratic and participative. So, as you can see here, number 1, the leader makes the decision and announces it to employees and individually or in a group without any discussion. It could also be in writing. Number 2, the leader makes decisions and sells it to employees through a presentation of why it's a good idea. It could also be in writing. Number 3, the leader presents ideas and invites employee questions. Number 4, leader presents the tentative decision subject to change. And number 5, leader presents the problem, gets suggested solutions, and makes the decision. Then number 6, the leader defines limits and asks the employees to make a decision. The leader permits, and then lastly 7, the leader permits employees to make ongoing decisions within defined limits. House developed the Path Goal leadership model in the 1970s. Path Goal leaders determine employee objectives and achieve them using one of 4 styles. The focus is on how leaders influence employees' perceptions of their goals and the paths they follow to attain them. As shown in Figure 12.5, an adaptation of the model, House's model uses situational factors to determine which leadership style best achieves goals by influencing employee performance and satisfaction. Subordinate situational characteristics include, number 1, authoritarianism, the degree to which employees defer and want to be told what to do and how to do the job. Number 2, the locus of control. You can go back to Chapter 8 for that, but it's the extent to which employees believe they and not others control goal achievement. So it's an internal versus external locus of control. And number 3, the ability, the extent of employees' ability to perform tasks to achieve goals. Environmental situational factors include, number 1, the task structure, the degree of repetitiveness of the job. Number 2, formal authority, the extent of the leader's power, and number 3, the work group, the extent to which co-workers contribute to job satisfaction. After considering the situational factors, managers choose the most appropriate leadership style by following these guidelines. Number 1, directive. The leaders provide high structure and play task behavior roles. Directive leadership is appropriate when subordinates want authority, have external locus of control, and have low ability. Number 2, supportive. Leaders provide high consideration and play maintenance behavior roles. Supportive leadership is appropriate when subordinates do not want autocratic leadership. They have internal locus of control and are highly competent and therefore do not need directives. And number 3 is participative. Managers solicit employee input with shared leadership. Participative leadership is appropriate when subordinates want to be involved, have an internal locus of control, and are high in ability. And number 4, achievement-oriented. These leaders set difficult but achievable goals, expect subordinates to perform at their highest level, and reward them for doing so. That is, leaders provide both high structure and high consideration. It's appropriate when subordinates are open to autocratic leadership, have external locus of control, and are high in ability. Academics tend to like path goal leaderships because it is based on research. However, a major criticism from actual managers is that, like continuum leadership, the path goal model is too subjective and complex. The model lists the variables on the left and the leadership style in the center, but it doesn't provide practical guidance on how to use the variables to select the most appropriate style for achieving the goal. Yale University professor Victor Vroom developed, that's a fun name to say, Vroom Vroom, developed participative decision-making models during the 1960s. And with colleagues, he revised the model that he presented in a 2000 publication. He is a normative model because it provides a sequential set of questions that are rules or norms to follow to determine the best decision style for a given situation. To determine the appropriate style for a specific situation, users of the normative model answer 7 questions, not discussed here, some of which may be skipped depending on prior answers. The questions are sequential and are presented in a decision tree format, similar to that of Fiedler's contingency model. So, unlike the leadership continuum and path goal models, this model tells you which decision-making style to use. Normative leaders use one of 5 decision-making styles appropriate for the situation. Vroom identified the 5 leadership styles based on the level of participation of group members in the decision. You can see here there are 2 that are autocratic, 2 that are consultative, and 1 is group-oriented. So, with those normative leaders, these are the different steps that they take. Number 1, decide. The leader makes the decision alone without any input from the group. Or you have one that is consulting with individuals. The leader describes the problem to individual group members, gets information and suggestions, and then makes the decision. The third option is to consult the group. The leader holds a group meeting and describes the problem to the group, gets information and suggestions, and then makes the decision. And then number 4, facilitate. The leader seeks participation from the group through debate and consensus on the decision. However, the leader has the final say on the decision. And then number 5 is delegate. The leader lets the group diagnose the problem and make the decision within stated limits. The role of the leader is to answer questions and provide encouragement and resources. Vroom's model is popular with academics because it is based on research. However, the model is not popular with managers who find it too complex to select one of 2 models, then answer 7 questions, and finally determine the appropriate leadership style. Because of this complexity, we don't show the 2 models with 7 questions and 5 leadership styles. Vroom now has an electronic model as well. The contingency models we've described so far are complex, making it difficult to determine which leadership style to use in what situations. In this section, we present the contingency management model developed by Robert N. Lussier, who is the author of the text. Contingency managers analyze the employee capability level and select the autocratic, consultative, participative, or empowerment style for the situation. Lussier's model makes it relatively easy to select the appropriate style for a given situation. There are 2 distinct aspects of employee capability. Notice that to determine capability level, we are combining the first 2 dimensions of the performance formula discussed in Chapter 11. Performance equals ability times motivation times resources. So ability, do employees have the knowledge, experience, education, skills, and training to do a particular task without direction? Number 2, do they have motivation? Do employees have the confidence to do the task? Do they want to do the task? Are they committed to performing the task? And will they perform the task without encouragement and support? Employee capability may be measured on a continuum from low to outstanding. As a manager, you assess each employee's capability level. So for those that are low, the employees can't do the task without detailed directions and close supervision. Employees in this category are either unable or unwilling to do the task. Moderate. The employees have moderate ability and need specific direction and support to get the task done properly. They may be highly motivated, but they still need direction. For those that have high ability, they may lack the confidence to do the job. What they need most is your support and encouragement to motivate them to get the task done. And outstanding are those employees that are capable of doing the task without any direction or support. Most people perform a variety of tasks on the job, and employee capability may vary depending on the task. For example, a bank teller may handle routine transactions with great ease, but falter when opening new or special accounts. Employees tend to start a new job with limited capabilities, and they need close direction. As their ability to do the job increases, managers can spend less of their time on close supervision and more on just being supportive. As a manager, you gradually develop your employees from low to outstanding levels over time. Selecting the appropriate leadership style in a given situation. As discussed earlier, with reference to OSU's two-dimensional leadership model, when you interact with the employees you manage, your behavior can focus on directing or supporting employees. If you're using directive behavior, the manager focuses on getting the job done by training, directing, and controlling behavior and closely overseeing performance. With supportive behavior, the manager focuses on developing relationships by encouraging and motivating behavior without telling the employee what to do. The manager explains things and listens to employee views, helping employees make their own decisions by building confidence and self-esteem. Based on the two dimensions of behavior, directive and supportive, 4 management styles have been described. The 4 contingency management styles are autocratic, consultative, participative, and empowerment. Which style to use is based on the employee capability level as discussed next. The leadership theories we've presented thus far assume that some type of leadership style should be used in every situation. What happens when leaders are not what the situation requires? That is, Stephen Kerr and John Jeremiah theorize that certain situational variables prevent leaders from affecting subordinate attitudes and behaviors. Substitutes for leadership eliminate the need for a leader. In certain circumstances, 3 characteristics can counteract or neutralize the efforts of leaders or render them unnecessary. The following variables can substitute for neutralize because they provide the needed direction or support. Characteristics of your subordinates. Because of their ability, knowledge, and experience, they don't need much supervision. Characteristics of the task. Because the job is routine, they don't need much supervision. And lastly, characteristics of the organization. Because of the structure, they don't need much supervision. For example, when teams share leadership. You will have many opportunities in your future jobs and teams to develop your own authentic leadership style to fit each situation, and the leadership models in this chapter can help. As we bring the chapter to a close, to help you through this maze, we've gathered the various behavior and situational leadership theories and models in figure 12.7, which you see here. These theories and models are all based on 2 dimensions of leadership, using OSU and as shown in figure 12.1 earlier. However, different authors use different terms for what are essentially the same dimensions. So figure 12.7 provides a comparison of the behavioral and situational leadership models and uses direction and support to describe these 2 dimensions of leadership. The columns are headed high direction, low support, high direction, high support, low direction, high support, and low direction, low support. The terms that appear below these headings have basically the same meanings as the column headings. Note that figure 12.7 doesn't include the contemporary perspectives of LMX, visionary, charismatic, transformational, transactional, symbolic, servant, and authentic leadership because they don't include specific leadership behavior. Study the leadership theories and models carefully. It will help you understand the similarities and differences in the approaches to leadership we've examined in this chapter. So with this chapter, you're going to be expected to explain why managers are not always leaders. You should also be able to compare trait, behavioral, and contingency theories of leadership, be able to explain the leadership trait theory, contrast two-dimensional leaders and grid leaders, and identify the management levels where charismatic, transformational, transactional, and symbolic leaders work best. Be able to contrast the various contingency models of leadership and critique the continuum and path goal models. And lastly, be able to describe normative leaders. And that is all we have for today. You guys have a great day. I'll talk with you soon.